We're living in a time of shared universes. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Extended Universe, the Air Bud Universe. But nobody could have expected that one of today's most successful and exciting connected cinematic worlds would spring from a little horror movie from genre veteran James Wan. That's right, the Conjuring Verse. Loosely based on the real-life cases of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Conjuring films pit their characters against all kinds of demons. Inner demons, outer demons, doll demons, nun demons, and all of that demonic history goes back more than 1,000 years. Before the latest entry in the series, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, let's put the events of the Conjuring universe in chronological order. Though most of the Conjuring Verse's action takes place in the 20th century, there are some seeds planted hundreds of years beforehand that go on to bear some pretty rotten fruit. The forces of hell attempt to send their first representative to Earth somewhere between the 5th and the 10th century. In Romania, the Satan-worshipping Duke of St. Carta erects a castle in which he performs rituals to open a gateway to the underworld. He nearly succeeds, but the Catholic Church arrives just in time to stop the ritual and seal the portal using the blood of Christ. The church repurposes the castle as an abbey, believing that perpetual prayer on the part of the nuns is the only thing that will keep Valak, the demon the Duke was attempting to bring forth, at bay. But Valak is nothing if not patient, so we'll be seeing it again in the future. Moving forward to the 17th century, a Mexican mother is jilted by her cheating husband. In a fit of madness, she drowns her 2 young boys as revenge. God forsakes her, dooming her to roam the earth seeking children to replace her own. Her constant grief and acid tears earned her the name La Llorona, the weeping woman. Filicide is a common occurrence in the Conjuring verse. 190 years later, the witch Bathsheba sacrifices her baby to the devil and commits suicide, but not before laying a curse on her land, dooming all that would try to take it. During World War II, Romania is attacked by Allied forces, and boy do they pick the wrong abbey to bomb. The blasts unseal the gateway to hell, and over the next decade, the nuns of St. Carta fall victim to Valak, who itself takes the form of a nun to blend in with the cloister. Heading west to California, dollmaker Sam Mullins, his wife Esther, and their daughter Annabelle, B as they call her, are in the process of fixing a flat tire when B is struck and killed by a car. This tragedy sends the Mullins into reclusion. In their grief, the Mullins pray and pray to see their beloved daughter again, but it isn't God that answers their prayers. It's a demon who, after giving them a glimpse of little B, tricks them into transferring its spirit into that creepy doll, oh my God, coming up on 8 movies and it's still freaky as hell. And as it turns out, that demon's a real crappy house guest, attacking Esther and gouging her eye out. That ends up being a bridge too far, so the Mullins call in a couple of priests to redecorate B's closet with Bible pages, and they seal the possessed doll inside. In 1952, the only 2 surviving sisters of St. Carta finally succumb to Valak's evil.
I will come after you next. Don't let it have you. You know what you must do. I can't. Then not even God can save.
Rather than give Valak the soul it needs to escape into the outside world, Sister Victoria hangs herself. The body is discovered days later by Frenchie, the delivery guy. Sister Victoria's death leads the Vatican to dispatch Father Burke to investigate, insisting that he bring along Sister Irene, a nun who has yet to take her vows. The 2 enlist Frenchie to bring them to the Abbey, which has some pretty serious lawn ornaments.
They keep the evil in, not out.
Well, at least they're functional. Frenchie leaves Burke and Irene to their investigation, and it doesn't take long at all for the pair to discover that the evil that had been contained there has started to leak out. Valak plagues Burke and Irene, taking multiple spooky forms in an attempt to steal their souls. But with help from the ghosts of the sisters that held Valak back for all those years, and Frenchie, who's back to prove he'll do pretty much anything for Sister Irene, the heroes are able to recover the artifact necessary to reseal the gateway to hell, the vial containing the blood of Christ.
Holy shit. The holiest.
Though Valak does briefly succeed in possessing Irene, Frenchie uses some of the blood to cast it out. Valak dispatches him before attempting to reclaim Irene's soul, but she gives Valak a face full of Christ, and it's back to hell for the demon nun. At least that's what they think. See, Valak took out an insurance policy with Frenchie, whose real name is Maurice. We'll revisit that later. 12 years after B's death, the Mullins decide to reopen their doors, taking in Sister Charlotte and a group of girls whose orphanage was just closed down. Among the girls are best friends Linda and Janice, who suffers from polio. They are expressly told not to enter the Mullins' late daughter's room, but this is a horror movie and nobody listens to ominous warnings. One night, Janice sneaks into B's room and finds her creepy-ass doll, the vessel for the demon. The demon eventually attacks Janice, throwing her down the stairs and confining her to a wheelchair. Soon after that, it's able to possess Janice by puking in her mouth, which is so gross. Linda starts to notice Janice and the Annabelle doll getting real close and is almost thrown down a well, presumably to do battle with Samara from The Ring, but Sister Charlotte saves the day. Janice and her demon friend go on a murderous rampage, absolutely eviscerating Esther Mullins, but Sister Charlotte gets the upper hand and locks Janice in the creepy Bible closet. Of course, Janice escapes through a hole in the wall and travels south to Santa Monica, but she'll need a change of identity, a new name. She settles on the name of the Mullins' daughter.
Annabelle.
In 1970, Annabelle's doll comes into the possession, get it, of John and Mia Form, a young couple in Santa Monica getting ready for the birth of their first child. Mia's decorating the nursery with sort of terrifying dolls, and John decides he should get her the most terrifying one. It's not long after that before we find out what Janice, or Annabelle as she's known these days, has been up to since escaping the Mullins farm. After she was adopted by the Higgins family next door, she joined a cult, and along with another member of that cult, sneaks into her adoptive family's home and murders them. Annabelle and her accomplice then enter the Form's home and attack them. While the cops kill the male assailant, Annabelle grabs her old doll and kills herself while holding it, transferring the demon right back to where it started. As is always the case when that horrifying excuse for a child's plaything is around, the Forms are plagued by supernatural attacks. In researching the events with Evelyn, a bookstore owner, Mia discovers the demon is after her soul. The Form's priest, Father Perez, takes the doll with the intention of having some contacts of his exorcise it, but the demon attacks and soon possesses him. The demon, through Father Perez, abducts the Form's newborn. It demands Mia's soul in exchange for the child's life. But Evelyn, racked with guilt over causing her own daughter's death, sees this as a chance at redemption and sacrifices herself to the demon to keep Mia and her daughter safe. Thanks, Alfre Woodard. Annabelle and the demon controlling her disappear into the night. Around that same time, Ed and Lorraine Warren, a demonologist and medium respectively, assists on the exorcism of a French-Canadian farmer, our old friend Maurice. And we all know who's possessing him. Valak grabs Lorraine and shows her a vision of Ed's death. The horrifying premonition causes Lorraine to lock herself into seclusion for 8 days, giving Ed serious reservations about subjecting her to further investigations. The Annabelle doll resurfaces 6 months after its encounter with the Forms in a pawn shop, where she's purchased as a present for a nursing student named Debbie. And wouldn't you know it, Annabelle ends up being a terrible roommate, starting with passive-aggressive notes and ending up being just plain aggressive. But Debbie's smart. Debbie knows what's up. Debbie calls in the big guns, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens decide to bring Annabelle back home with them, but not without incident. Their car breaks down in front of a cemetery and they realize the doll is a beacon for supernatural activity. With the help of their friend Father Gordon, the Warrens seal Annabelle away in their artifact room.
The evil is contained.
Yeah, I bet it's not gonna stay contained for long, Lorraine. Soon after, the Perrin family, Roger, Carolyn, and their 5 daughters, find the perfect home in Harrisville, Rhode Island. You know, the one the witch Bathsheba cursed forever and eternity almost 100 years ago. And as it turns out, vengeful witches can raise just about as much hell as demons, and the spirit of Bathsheba quickly wreaks havoc on the Perrins. Carolyn seeks out Ed and Lorraine for help, and with the telltale signs of temperature shifts, rancid meat smells, and mocking of the Holy Trinity, it doesn't take the Warrens long to surmise that, yep, there is definitely something wrong at the Perrin house. Though Ed is still reluctant to risk Lorraine's help, the two of them take the case. They set up a number of traps to catch the spirit on camera to prove to the Catholic Church that the Perrins are really being haunted, so they'll approve and perform an exorcism. And boy, do they prove it. The Perrins move into a motel, but the damage is done. Bathsheba succeeds in possessing Carolyn, forcing her to take 2 of her daughters back to the house to kill them. The Warrens arrive just in time to stop Carolyn from murdering one of her girls, but when they try to take her outside, her skin starts to burn. Bathsheba won't let her leave, forcing Ed to perform the exorcism himself. It doesn't stick right away. But with the 1-2 punch of Ed calling her out by name and Lorraine using some magic hands to make Carolyn remember her family, they manage to cast Bathsheba out. And man, Carolyn really casts Bathsheba out. The Warrens return home with a creepy keepsake for their creepy collection and a lead on a certain horror going on in Amityville. Though for some reason, plot hole, they don't actually investigate it for around 5 years or so. Ed and Lorraine go out of town on another investigation, leaving their daughter Judy in the care of her babysitter, Mary Ellen. Judy's taking after her mom, exhibiting signs of clairvoyance herself, like seeing long-dead priests at school. That afternoon, Mary Ellen's friend Daniela tempts fate and lets herself into the artifact room. She's trying to make contact with her father, who died in a car accident while she was driving, but the only one who responds is Annabelle. Can't you read, Daniela? Things go downhill quick. B. Mullins shows up on the Warrens' doorstep looking for her doll, and Daniela actually sees her dad. Although, come on, we all know by now neither of these ghosts are who they appear to be. Pair that with a bloody bride in a haunted dress wandering around, and you've got yourself a good old-fashioned super haunting. There's even a singing soft boy on the lawn. The terrifying thing is that he's real. The only way to stop the evil spirits running rampant in the Warrens' home is to seal the Annabelle doll away one more time. The girls get separated, as you do in horror movies, with Daniela getting locked in the artifact room. She sees her father again, but doesn't quite get the closure she's hoping for. You did this to me! No, she gets possessed and tries to murder Mary Ellen and Judy. Luckily, the footage of Maurice's exorcism is enough to subdue her. Mary Ellen and Judy recapture the Annabelle doll, but the demon who controls Annabelle isn't letting go without a fight. It nearly steals Judy's soul, but with a little of that Warren spunk, Judy holds the other spirits at bay just long enough to seal the doll from whence she sat.
The evil has been contained.
Back in Los Angeles, recently widowed social worker Anna Tate Garcia visits Patricia Alvarez, a troubled mother of two who the state believes may be an unfit guardian for her boys, Carlos and Tomas. She's locked the boys in a creepy closet, a Conjuring hallmark at this point, and the boys are so traumatized they don't want to come out.
Close the door.
But maybe not for the reason you would be expecting. While in protective custody, Tomas wanders off in the night. When Carlos goes after him, the two are confronted by the murderous Mexican mother from all those years ago, La Llorona. Later that night, the boys are found drowned in the river. In her grief, Patricia prays that La Llorona will take Anna's children and return her own. And while returning Patricia's kids doesn't seem like something La Llorona's really gonna go out of her way for, a new pair of children to target is something the evil spirit is very interested in. Both of Anna's kids, Chris and Sam, are attacked multiple times by La Llorona, which drives Anna to seek help from a local priest who we've met before, Father Perez. He informs her that getting the Catholic Church involved will take time that Anna doesn't have, and instead points her to Raphael, a faith healer who abandoned the church years ago. Raphael's methods are a bit unorthodox, like using the family you're supposed to be protecting as bait to draw out the spirit you're supposed to be protecting them from seems risky, but hey, he gets results and actually banishes La Llorona from the house. That is, until Patricia shows up and breaks the seal, keeping La Llorona out. The weeping woman nearly kills Anna's kids, but a good old-fashioned crucifix straight to the heart is enough to stop La Llorona once and for all. But maybe. Demons are very resilient in these movies. It's 1976 and Ed and Lorraine finally get around to investigating the murders made famous by the Amityville Horror. While in the house, Lorraine has the same vision of Ed's death she had 5 years prior. This time though, the vision is preceded by an appearance from Valak the Demon Nun. The following year, the Infernal goes international. The Hodgson family, single mom Peggy and her 4 kids, begin to experience supernatural phenomena, but it's the second oldest, Janet, who sees the most of what's going on.
My house!
The ghost of the elderly Bill Wilkins, a previous tenant of the house, wants these pesky meatbags out of his home, probably so he can eat saltines and watch the news at full volume or something. The Warrens catch wind of the Hodgsons' plight, but this time around it's Lorraine that's reluctant to let Ed take the case, given her premonition about his death. But of course they go anyway, because horror movies demand horror movie choices. Despite some evidence that Janet may be faking the possession, though we all know how dumb that is given all the spooky stuff going on, Ed and Lorraine discover that Valak is the one controlling Bill Wilkins and tormenting the Hodgsons. This all leads to a confrontation with the Valak-possessed Janet. Ed goes in alone to save her, putting the first pieces of Lorraine's premonition into motion. But Lorraine realizes that during her vision of the demon nun, she'd managed to write, or stab, its name into her Bible. As we learned in the first Conjuring, evil spirits hate their own names.
Bathsheba!
So Lorraine goes into the house and identifies the nun as Valak.
The defiler! The profane! The marquis of snakes!
Or if you're a fan of brevity, just Valak. Lorraine succeeds in casting Valak back to hell, saving Janet from possession and saving Ed from getting a tree trunk through the chest. That brings us to 1981, as the Warrens investigate the circumstances surrounding the murder trial of Arnie Johnson, who was the first person in American history to claim demonic possession as a defense in court. Will we believe Arnie when he claims the devil made me do it? We'll have to wait until the next Conjuring movie releases to find out. Until then, be sure to check out some of our other timeline videos, and as always, be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you like to watch IGN.